24 to 32 lead balls, each the diameter of a 9mm bullet, traveling over 1,000 feet per second, delivering the combined kinetic energy of a modern elephant rifle. That's what a 10-gauge shotgun fired into a man's torso at 30 feet. Period accounts describe the blast as nearly cutting his body in two. That's not dime novel exaggeration, it's accurate forensic prediction. The weapon wasn't a standard coach gun. It had a 3-trigger mechanism so unusual that only one manufacturer ever made it, and the same gun would kill another outlaw 14 years later in different hands. 9 men fired back at the shooter from 30 feet. 7 bullet holes through his coat, 5 through his hat, 3 through his pants, 1 in his boot heel. Not a single round broke his skin. The creek you've seen Kurt Russell wade through in that scene? It never existed. The terrain, the ambush, the face-off, almost everything the movie showed you was invented. Wyatt Earp, 6 days after his brother Morgan died in his arms, standing alone in a canyon because his friends had run, holding a borrowed weapon that would sell for $375,000. Welcome to Wild West Revealed. That borrowed shotgun wouldn't have been in Wyatt's hands at all if Morgan Earp had survived the night of March 18th, but he didn't, and what happened next made Wyatt Earp into either a federal lawman or a murderer, depending on which newspaper you believed. Wyatt Barry Stapp Earp was born March 19, 1848, in Monmouth, Illinois, named after his father's commanding officer in the Mexican-American War. His father, Nicholas, moved the family constantly westward, chasing opportunity and finding mostly failure. Farming, then law, then farming again. The Earps learned early that respectability was something you took, not something you were given. Wyatt's first wife, Urilla, died of typhoid in 1870 while pregnant. After that, he drifted, arrested twice for horse theft, fled Missouri ahead of charges, worked as a buffalo hunter and railroad laborer before finally pinning on a badge in Wichita in 1875. By 1876, he was assistant city marshal of Dodge City. He favored the Colt single-action Army 45, carried it butt forward on his left hip for a cross draw, but Wyatt had also worked as a Wells Fargo shotgun messenger on the stage routes. He knew what scatterguns could do at close range. He arrived in Tombstone in December 1879, chasing silver boom money and a sheriff's appointment. What he found instead was the Clanton-McClory gang, a corrupt county sheriff named Johnny Bean, and a town of 10,000 people with more saloons than churches and more guns than laws. The Cowboys, in a loose confederation of rustlers and stage robbers, operated openly under Bean's protection. Doc Holliday arrived in 1880 at Wyatt's invitation. The tubercular dentist turned gambler would become Wyatt's closest ally. He would also be the one who ran at Iron Springs while Wyatt stood alone. If you're learning something new about the real Old West, hit that like button and subscribe. We're just getting started, and the weapon that defined this story is nothing like what Hollywood showed you. Morgan Earp died on March 18, 1882, shot through a window while playing billiards. A week later, Wyatt was carrying a weapon that would define his legend, but it wasn't his. The shotgun belonged to Fred Dodge. Officially, Dodge was a Tombstone gambler. Unofficially, he was a secret Wells Fargo agent investigating stagecoach robberies. When Wyatt assembled his posse for the Vendetta ride, Dodge lent him one of the most unusual firearms on the frontier, J. Stevens and Company. Model 1877, the 3-trigger side-by-side hammer shotgun, 10-gauge, serial number 927, matching stamps on the barrels, fore-end, trigger guard, and receiver. Damascus steel barrels cut down from the factory standard of 30 to 32 inches to just 22¼ inches. Overall length around 38 inches, weight roughly 8 to 9 pounds. The cut-down barrels weren't decorative. They meant easier carry on horseback and devastating spread at close range. This was a weapon built for one purpose, ending fights fast. Here's something most people get backwards. A 10-gauge is bigger than a 12-gauge. The gauge system counts how many bore diameter lead balls equal 1 pound of lead. Fewer balls means bigger bore. A 10-gauge bore measures 0.775 inches across. nearly 3/4 of an inch, large enough to fit your thumb inside. The 3-trigger mechanism made this Stevens unique in American firearms. A single trigger in the front guard unlocked and opened the action. 2 standard triggers in the rear guard fired each barrel. No other manufacturer ever duplicated this design. Stevens produced it only from 1876 to 1884. The term coach gun you hear in every Western? Modern collector's invention. In 1882, they called these weapons messenger's guns, cut-down shotguns, or simply scatter guns. The phrase riding shotgun first appeared in a 1905 novel. It wasn't period language either. Wyatt carried the Stevens looped to his saddle horn or across the pommel, not in a scabbard. Witnesses described him jumping from his horse with a shotgun in his hands. The weapon needed to be instantly accessible. Black powder shooters described the 10 gauge as kicking like a pissed-off mule. Sharper initial acceleration than a modern smokeless loads. The muzzle flash from those 22-inch barrels would have been enormous, a daylight visible orange-white fireball with each shot. This same shotgun would kill again. After Tombstone, Fred Dodge continued his Wells Fargo career for decades. He lent the Stevens to U.S. Marshal Heck Thomas, who used it to kill notorious outlaw Bill Doolin in 1896. One weapon, 2 famous outlaws, 14 years apart. On the afternoon of March 24th, Wyatt rode toward Iron Springs with that shotgun looped to his saddle horn. He didn't know 9 cowboys were waiting at the waterhole. He didn't know that in the next 2 minutes, that 3-trigger Stevens would prove exactly why lawmen preferred scatterguns. March 24th, 1882, afternoon, the Whetstone Mountains, roughly 12 miles west of Tombstone. The Earp posse, Wyatt, Doc Holliday, Sherman McMaster, Turkey Creek Jack Johnson, and Texas Jack Vermillion rode toward Iron Springs expecting to meet a courier named Charlie Smith, who was bringing $1,000 from mining investor E.B. Gage. The Springs sat behind a 15-foot eroded bank, hidden from the trail. 9 cowboys were cooking a meal beside the water. Curly Bill Brocius, Pony Deal, Johnny Barnes, Frank Patterson, Milt Hicks, Bill Hicks, Rattlesnake Bill Johnson, Ed Lyle, and Johnny Lyle. Wyatt claimed later he had a premonition. He dismounted before reaching the embankment, took the shotgun in his right hand, led his horse forward. Both parties saw each other at the same moment, 30 feet apart. Maybe 50. Sherman McMaster shouted Curly Bill's name. Curly Bill fired first, both barrels. The pellets tore through Wyatt's coat skirt, missed his body. Wyatt fired both barrels of the Stevens. The blast hit Curly Bill squarely in the abdomen, just beneath the chest wall. Period accounts describe it as well-nigh cutting his body in 2. He fell into the water at the edge of the spring, dead before he landed. Then chaos. Cowboys burst from a line shack. Gunfire everywhere. Texas Jack Vermillion's horse was shot and killed, pinning his leg. And here's what the movie never shows you. Doc Holliday ran. Sherman McMaster ran. Turkey Creek, Jack Johnson ran. They retreated to cover, leaving Wyatt standing alone in the open. The relative stranger stayed. Texas Jack, pinned under his dead horse, couldn't run. Wyatt drew his Colt, shot Johnny Barnes in the chest. Barnes would die days later in Charleston. Shot Milt Hicks in the arm. The cowboys poured fire at the lone figure in the clearing. 7 bullet holes through his coat, 5 through his hat, 3 through his pants, 1 in his boot heel. His saddle horn splintered. Not a single round broke his skin. The creek you've seen Kurt Russell wade through in that scene, it never existed. The springs sat behind rocky canyon terrain with a 15-foot embankment, not a flowing river. The movie shows every posse member standing firm beside Wyatt. The reality, his closest allies fled, and the movie omits the most unglamorous detail of all. Wyatt couldn't remount his horse because his gun belt had slipped to his knees. Doc eventually rode back under fire to help Vermillion reach cover. The posse withdrew. They reached Henry Clay Hooker's Sierra Bonita Ranch 3 days later, where Hooker congratulated Wyatt on killing Curly Bill and gave him fresh horses free of charge. 6 days earlier, Morgan Earp had been shot through a window at Campbell and Hatch's billiard parlor. The bullet entered his right abdomen, shattered his spinal column, and exited his left side, paralyzed instantly. His last words to Wyatt, "I can't see a damn thing." He died within the hour. What the movie never captures is what was inside Wyatt's head when he pulled those triggers. This wasn't a gunfight, it was grief translated into ballistics. 24 to 32 lead balls at 1,000 feet per second, fired by a man who had nothing left to lose. If you've made it this far, you clearly care about real history over Hollywood myths. Drop a like so I know to keep digging into stories like this. Understanding what Wyatt felt doesn't fully explain what happened to Curly Bill's body. For that, you need to understand the physics. An 1880s black powder 10-gauge shell used approximately 3.5 drams, 95 grains, of black powder behind a payload of buckshot. Paper-hulled cartridge with a brass base. Wells Fargo messenger J.T. Morley documented the standard defensive load. 16 buckshot pellets per barrel, arranged in 4 layers of 4. Each double-aught pellet measured .33 caliber and weighed roughly 54 grains. Muzzle velocity, around 1,000 to 1,100 feet per second. The energy math is staggering. Each pellet delivered approximately 130 to 145 foot-pounds of kinetic energy, equivalent to a 32 ACP pistol round. A single barrel, 1,500 to 2,300 foot-pounds total. Both barrels combined 3,000 to 5,000 foot-pounds, delivered in under 2 seconds. For comparison, a .45 Colt revolver, the iconic Frontier sidearm, delivers roughly 350 foot-pounds per shot. Firing both barrels of that 10-gauge was like being struck simultaneously by 8 to 14 .45 Colt bullets. The combined energy rivals a .458 Winchester Magnum. That's the cartridge designed to stop charging Cape Buffalo. At 30 feet through a cylinder bore, the pattern measured roughly 8 to 12 inches in diameter, the width of a dinner plate. Every pellet struck within the target's torso, each one capable of penetrating 14 to 17 inches of soft tissue, enough to pass entirely through a human body. The overlapping wound channels would have destroyed the abdominal aorta, spine, liver, kidneys, and intestines. And the historical description, nearly cut in two, isn't dime novel exaggeration. It's accurate forensic prediction. Black powder produces 55% solid combustion products. When Wyatt and Curly Bill fired their shotguns almost simultaneously, 3 10-gauge blasts within 2 seconds. The canyon filled with dense white-gray smoke thick enough to blind both parties. At Iron Springs, Wyatt would have been engulfed in an opaque wall within seconds of firing. He couldn't see whether his target was dead or alive. The sound exceeded 150 decibels, louder than a jet engine. Both men would have been temporarily deafened. The sulfur stench of black powder would have dominated the canyon for minutes. Wyatt's backup weapons on the Vendetta ride included his Colt single-action Army .45, carried butt forward on his left hip for a cross-draw. After the shotgun was empty, this was the weapon that wounded Johnny Barnes and Milt Hicks. His Winchester rifle sat in the saddle boot, inaccessible when the shooting started. The Stevens shotgun, serial number 927, sold at Heritage Auctions on February 22nd, 2020, for $375,000, nearly quadrupling its $100,000 estimate. It's now in private hands, a surviving Earp Colt. Single Action Army, serial number 69562, sits at the Autry Museum of the American West in Los Angeles.